Welcome to the Steve Stine Guitar Podcast, brought to you by GuitarZoom.com. If you want to improve your guitar playing, keep listening. If you want to improve even faster, go to GuitarZoom.com, where you'll find all of Steve's premium courses, masterclasses, and memberships that'll help you quickly and easily improve your playing. Now here's your host, Steve Stine.
Okay, just get things going. We're going to be talking about melodic soloing, and I'm going to repeat this in just a little bit. Hey, Steve, how you doing, buddy? I'll repeat this in a little bit once more people show up here. Hey, Byram. But basically, we're going to be talking about melodic soloing. I have a new guitar course out called Melodic Soloing, and you can most certainly check it out if you head over to GuitarZoom.com, and I'm sure there'll be something here in the chat very soon for you as well. So, looks like everything is going good. Hey, Ralph, Bill, Fadi, Chirag, Mike, Noel. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much. This is awesome. So glad you're here. We're going to learn a lot of stuff today. So hopefully either you have your guitar or you're going to be able to get to your guitar a little later. Okay? And then just watch it again, because you'll be able to watch the replay on Facebook or YouTube or whatever. If you're catching me on Instagram and I'm only this big, you can always head over to YouTube or Facebook and watch the full version. Hey, Rich. Hey, Rob. Hey, Domingo. Hey, Stefan. Thomas, Rick, awesome. Alberta, cool. Mohammed is here. Thank you so much. Good afternoon to you, Ken. Spaz49 is here. Joe is here. Awesome, cool. Okay, Ralph Hicks is ready to go. Yes, the iconic gem. Yes, one of my favorite guitars of all time. This one right here. The neck and the pickups and everything in it are just, this is by far my favorite guitar that I own. It just feels beautiful. Hey, Brian. Hey, Ken. Hey, David. Just so you know, today, I'm not using the Kemper today. I'm using the Neural DSP Corey Wong amp sim, and I'm using two different versions of it. So that's what I'm getting right now. And that is something we're going to talk about today, just very briefly. I want to play it at GearFest. Well, if we have a GearFest this year, I'm not sure if GearFest is online this year or not, but if we are able to get together, I'll definitely be bringing it out and you could play it. Any pickups you recommend? It depends. I'm a very avid EMG player, but I also I've got Seymour Duncan's and I've got Planet Tone pickups, which I think are amazing as well. There's a lot of stuff out there. Hey, Tom. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So basically what we're doing today is we're celebrating the release of my melodic soloing guitar course, which you can check out at guitarzoom.com. And what we're going to be doing today is covering quite a bit of stuff, actually. And just so you know, I'm going to be going live again on Monday, and then again on Wednesday, and then on Friday, I will not be going live, but I will pre-record a video to continue this conversation. I was going to go live, but I'm actually going to be out of town next Friday. But I am going to make a video for you, and it'll be at the same time. Hey, Mick. Nice to see you, bud. Martin's out there. So just so you know, that's the thing is today, we're going to build on it on Monday. We're going to build on it again on Wednesday. And then Friday, I'm going to pre-record something, but it's going to build again. So before we get started, my notes are on my phone. If you're like me, I sit and it's about 11 o'clock at night, and I'm typing in all my notes for everything. So those are my notes for today's discussion. The big thing I want you to understand is when it comes to soloing in general, okay? It's entirely up to you how far down the rabbit hole you want to go in terms of scales and things like that. But what I really want you to be aware of is the more that you can see on your fretboard and truly manipulate, master, the more you can do, the more stuff you can do. Because, again, I don't want to talk the whole time. Just give me 2 minutes to kind of make you understand this if you've never heard me say this before. I always refer to them as buckets, but we have different practice buckets that we spend time in each day as guitar players. And one of our buckets is rudimentary practice, whether it's scales, whether it's licks, whether it's patterns, whatever it might be. And we practice all these things, but what often we don't spend enough time doing is taking some of those ideas and moving them into the creative improvisation, performance, whatever you want to call it. I call it the creative bucket, where we're really trying to put these things together. So the first thing I want you to understand is when it comes to soloing in general, whether you know one spot on the guitar, which we'll call a position, or you know a couple of them, or you only know one scale, or whatever it might be, that's perfectly okay. But if you get time, if you can make time to practice a bit more of that, to understand a bit more, to be able to visualize a bit more, and then move it into your creative bucket and really start learning how to move around, you're going to be really thankful for that, because it really does open up a lot of opportunity. Okay, the next caveat, if you will, that I'm going to say is that today I'm going to be using a backing track from Elevated Backing Tracks. I think those guys have got some of the most amazing backing tracks out there. And here's my thing about backing tracks. You can go on YouTube and find a jam track or whatever, jam track, backing track, whatever you want to call it, and it's perfectly fine. But another thing I would say to you is find one that kind of speaks to what you're trying to do, whether it's the key, the groove, the tempo, whatever it might be, and maybe it's all of those things, okay? But instead of just going out and trying 20 different things, which is fine too, but try and find the right one. Try and find the right one. So today what I've got is a backing track that's going from A to D to F sharp to D, and then a little bit later it goes to E, D, A, and there's a B minor in there. We'll have to get to it when we get to it. But you have to understand, soloing in general, and certainly melodic soloing, it is crucial to know what the chord progression is, because you need to respond to those chords to make a melody. If you're just, now I'm in the key of A, this backing track that I've got is in the key of A. So if I'm just going, and I'm just doing this, there might be a place where that sounds wonderful, but if I do it the entire time, it doesn't really sound like I know what I'm doing, okay? And the thing I always used to tell students was the thing that you got to be careful about is that if you're playing everything all the time, you're really emphasizing nothing, right? If you think about it that way, you're emphasizing nothing. You're emphasizing everything, which means that there's nothing that's sticking out. So I want you to think about that a little bit. So let's listen to our backing track real quick here that we're going to be working with for the next week. And again, thank you to Elevated Backing Tracks for this. You should definitely check them out if you're looking for backing tracks. So here we go. There's our A, D, F sharp minor, D, okay, real mellow. These are great tracks to try and play over because you're looking for creative, that creative bucket, right? You're trying to figure out how to make this sound interesting. So let's start at the very beginning, and it might be very basic for some of you, but I want to make sure we touch on the very beginning of this. So if I think about just this beginning chord progression, I've got A major, D major, F sharp minor, and then D major. So in my mind, I have one of three options. Either that means nothing to me, which we're hoping that it'll mean a little something to you, or I know my theory, and I'm able to move around the fretboard, and I know what notes are in each chord, and I can find them on the fretboard, and that's wonderful if you can do that, okay? But the next opportunity that you have is to start visualizing what we would call the caged chording system, okay? And with the caged chording system, what you're doing is you're learning to visualize chords all over the fretboard. So you have multiple different places that you can go and find what you're looking for. So what I'm looking for are the chords A, D, and F sharp minor somewhere on my fretboard. And then, of course, I need some sort of scale to be playing with as well. So let me show you what I'm going to be using today. So I'm going to take this A major position right here. And it's okay if you don't know this, okay? I'm just playing in that position right there. Now, I'm going to be moving around a little bit more than this just because, again, I'm going to show you what I do, but I'm going to try and break it down as simplistic as possible. But let's just start with that. Now, if I took that A major position right there, okay, and I started telling myself, okay, well, I got to find an A and a D and an F sharp minor, okay? So I know I've got an A chord sitting right here, A major. Okay? Why do I want to know that? Well, those are the notes that I might want to try and emphasize over the A, okay? Yes, elevated jam tracks and elevated backing tracks. I meant elevated jam tracks. Yep, absolutely. So we've got A major here. So those are my notes. So I'm sort of visualizing both the scale and that A major chord sitting right there, okay? So as I'm thinking about my playing, I know right there. These are all different notes that I can try and emphasize over that A chord. Now again, we're going to start off very basic, but I just want you to kind of understand where I'm coming from here. And if you know anything about your theory, obviously what I'm looking for here is the root, the third, and the fifth. Hey, Cody. So now here comes the D chord, right? So I've got a D chord sitting right here. D major right there, so I've got 5, 7, 7, 7. So now I can visualize those notes, and when the D chord comes up, maybe one of those notes are what I want to try and emphasize. Or two of them, or whatever it might be, right? And then I've got this F sharp minor chord. Well, F sharp minor as a bar chord would be down here. F sharp minor as a fifth string bar chord would be up here. So that causes a bit of a problem if I can't really visualize this. But if you know anything about like your cage chording system, okay, what I could do here is I could find my F sharp, and I've got an F sharp minor sitting right here. Now, I could come down here, or I could go up to this chord, again, wherever you want to go, but understand that that's going to pull you outside the position that we're sitting in right now, and that's okay if you know how to move around, and I will be doing a little bit of that, okay? So let's just start off as basic as humanly possible. I want you to watch this. This is going to be really, really, really basic, okay? But it's going to be helpful, I guarantee you, if this is something that you're kind of new to. So here we go. All right. I played one note, okay? I played the note A. And I played it over all three chords. Why? Because A fits over an A chord, it fits over the D chord, and it fits over the F sharp minor chord. Now, is it exciting and is it shreddy? No, it's completely the opposite. But here's what I want you to understand is sometimes the same note can be played over multiple chords. Because the thing about melodic playing is that sometimes we do play fast. And for me, especially growing up in the era that I did, I think really great guitar players or guitar solos, they contrast, which we're going to talk about later in this conversation, but there's a dynamic contrast to them. They're always kind of ebbing and flowing, right? And so what's nice is if you can find notes where you can hang out and that note is working over all those notes or over all those chords or a couple of chords or something. Bottom line here is we're trying to inject logic into simply moving around the fretboard aimlessly. And believe you me, every one of us, every single guitar player on the planet moves around aimlessly to a certain degree when they play. But if you can find some logic within that, it makes you sound like you know what you're doing, even if maybe you don't always know what you're doing, right? So if you start thinking about it along those lines, it makes a really big difference. So let me go now, and what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to pick a couple of different notes. So let me start this all over again. You always got to give me a minute to restart my software here. Watch this. Okay, again, nothing exciting, but now all of a sudden I've got two notes, okay? So I've got my C sharp that's working over the A, and then I'm heading over to D, over the D, and then when the F sharp comes up, F sharp minor, I'm going to C sharp, and then back to D. So now all of a sudden I've got this A that I can go to, and then I've got this C sharp and D. Now, at the very basic level, if you think about it, if you went to A over A, and F sharp over F sharp minor, and D over D, you'd be making a connection. But the trick to melody is trying to find smaller distances to make those connections. Because if you think of a singer doesn't tend to, jump way high and then way down and whatever. They work their way up and down. And again, this is just a generalization, but if you think about that, that's kind of what happens. Now, Lassie mentioned the tone, and I want to talk about that real quick here before we get going too. This particular jam track that I'm using, what I tried to do this morning was find a tone that reflected the way I want to play over the top of it. So instead of using a 5150 or something like that, that I would normally use for other things that I do, I didn't use that. So please understand, and I totally get, you have one amp and maybe only one channel or something like that. And I'm not saying we all have different things. I use a lot of amp sims and things, and certainly the Kemper and my Hughes and Kettner and stuff like that for different tones. But that's something that's really important to me, is I think it needs to bring out your creativity. If you can dial in, am I actually live or is this pre-recorded? Trauma factor, it's live, I'm here. So anyway, if that makes sense, it's really important to do that, because if you find a tone that really kind of matches what you're trying to do, it sounds more authentic, right? Now, let me just play a little bit and then we'll get back on track here, but I want to show you this, okay? That tone to me fits what I'm trying to say with this particular jam track, okay? So just think about that a little bit too, is when you're setting yourself up, you want to try and dial in a tone that feels good to you for whatever it is that you're trying to play over, okay? So for me, this fits really nice. There's not way too much distortion on it. I got a little delay, a little bit of reverb. But I can go, kind of into a single coil sound. Kind of get that. And then if I really need to get a bit more aggressive, I can go into my bridge. But again, it's not way too much. So I spent a little time, probably a good half an hour this morning, just trying to dial in the sound of a tone that kind of matched this. So again, I don't want to spend a bunch of time on that, but please understand how important that is, okay? So now let's go ahead and get back into our discussion here. So what we're doing is we're dialing in just a few of these notes. And now what we want to do is we want to start making connections to them, okay? So the first thing I want you to start thinking about is all the different ways that you can connect, right? One way would be, okay, here comes the A, so I'm going to play A. And here comes that F sharp, so I'm going to play something that matches that F sharp. I got to think, okay, what do I got? So I'm thinking about it, and I go, okay, well, I'm going to go up there. And then here comes the D. Right? So I'm just trying to get some basics together. So let me go and kind of real basic, just show you what I'm doing here, thinking, remember, our chord progression is A, D, F sharp minor, D. That's what you're thinking about, okay? So here we go. I'll just play that A. Okay, here we go. So again, nothing fancy, just making a basic connection to thinking about A and D, F sharp minor, and then D. So if you're new to this, remember, some of the things you're going to have issues with are visualizing, seeing all these things as they happen. And it's okay to press stop on the jam track that you're using and just sit and start trying to think about how you're going to connect this together. Because again, we always think that improvisation is something where it has to happen in real time. Like, nobody tell us what key it's in. Nobody tell us anything about the track. Give me 10,000 fans and let's go. And you're supposed to do this amazing job. You would be surprised to realize how many people practice. You prep, right? You spend time trying to work things up. Now, the difference between songwriting and improvisation is when you're songwriting, you're developing something that you're going to play over and over and over, right? If I do... right? Okay? If I do something like that, it's meant to be repeated. I'm writing something, and it's okay to write things. Right now, what we're talking about is developing the ability to improvise, but doing it in a very, very, very basic way by being able to visualize these things. So I'm visualizing a scale of some sort, and for me right now, it's A major, and then I'm developing this A major chord shape, and a D major, and an F sharp minor, and I'm trying to kind of visualize these and see the relationship between these as I'm moving and keep it very, very, very basic. Even if it's literally 3 notes where you're going A, okay, here comes the F sharp, or the D, excuse me, and F sharp, I'm gonna go there, and then to D. Again, it might sound simple and you're going, well, I'm a guitar player and I need to do all these other things. You'll get there, but you just need to start with something very basic. And then as you do that, let me show you the next step. So let's say I'm developing this and I'm thinking about some of the places I want to go, okay? The other thing I want you to notice too is that I'm kind of sitting in the heart of the guitar right now, right here. What I didn't do is start off my solo really high up here trying to do all this sort of thing because I want to ease into this thing. So I'm very aware that down here I get these lower sounds and here it's kind of the center of the guitar. As I move up, it starts getting a little bit higher. I'm not there yet. So I want to stay in this position here and just start developing the heart of the guitar sound, the guitar tone, and the pitches that I'm choosing right in this area, right, as I'm developing this idea. And then I'll move up further and do more stuff as I want to build energy. But I would just want to stay real basic. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this real basic idea, and all I'm going to start doing is using the other notes of the scale, if I know some of these, right, to connect my ideas. And I'm either going to do that by playing them or using them as an effect. And what I mean by that is I might slide, I might hammer on, I might pull off, something like that. Okay? So let me just show you. Again, I got to rewind this. Here we go. Here we go. Let this go by here. I'm actually going to go in the 4th position here. So here I go. So again, I'm not trying to move too fast, but just to show you, I'm just adding some little motion in between there, moving from whatever I want to go to on the A and whatever I want to go to on the D, whatever I want to go to on the F sharp, right? But in between there, I'm trying to add some movement. The next thing I want to be aware of, and I'll roll through some of this as we go back to, and please remember, you can always go back and you can watch this again, because there's a lot of information here. But as I'm building, I started with square one, which was finding the notes I want to try and emphasize. And you might have lots of them all over the fretboard, which is wonderful, okay? As long as you don't get lost. Now what I'm doing is I'm trying to fill in the spaces between those with either other notes of, well, they are other notes of the scale, and either I'm playing them with purpose or I'm playing them as an effect. They're just kind of grace notes to get me from point A to point B. And as I'm doing this, the next thing I got to start thinking about is my phrasing. And this is something you got to be really careful with, is when you're playing, don't try and make everything that you do exactly the same length and exactly the same dynamic and starting on the same note all the time or the same beat all the time. Let me show you what I mean. So let me start this again. So here we go. Here's my little intro thing. So here we go. I'm going to start on the same note, do this or the same rhythm, everything. Here we go. 3, 4. Here we go. Okay, so as I'm doing that, it becomes very predictable very fast. That I don't want. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start thinking, well, what if I use these three things? Number one, I'm going to try and use different dynamics. Number two, I'm going to start on different beats. And I'm not really sitting there thinking, well, I'm going to start on and of three or something like that. I'm just trying to change this up. Just like when you speak to people, if you're a public speaker at all or have to do things like that, you learn how to talk to people so they don't get bored because you're talking the same way. Every sentence is exactly the same thing. It's very important to change that up. And for me, it's the length of the phrases that I'm going to start changing as well. So now let's start it again, only this time, I'll just start from here. There's my D. There's my A. There's a million things I could do to make this a little more interesting by changing up the phrasing, changing up the dynamics, things like that. Now, for me, you can tell that I want to start moving, okay? It's just the nature of the beast for me. I want to start moving around and finding some things, and I don't want it to be predictable. I don't want the next note to always be predictable. I don't want that, okay? Let's see, Monday, I think, is developing arpeggios within our melodic system. And then maybe it's Wednesday where we start talking about non-chord tones and how we can use those to create tension and deception, which is really important in our playing. Because watch this, if I'm playing this song here and I'm playing it, watch what happens to the ear if I give you a note that's not as predictable. Watch. We gotta figure out where we are here. Sure. See how that note? Again here. Okay, so what happens there, and again, this is a conversation we're going to have next week, but I go to notes that are not part of that chord, not part of that triad, and it creates this tension, and it sounds beautiful, especially if it resolves back at some point. Doesn't always have to, but it just sounds really, really, really nice. So today's conversation is not about that. Today's conversation is about trying to do the predictable, land on the right notes at the right time, start plotting them out, because what it's going to show you is how well do you know the fretboard in whatever capacity you're trying to do this. Maybe it's one position on the guitar or two different positions or something like that. And of course, this is in the key of A. The key of A might not be your thing. You might normally play in the key of G or something like that. But just keep that in mind as you're practicing this, and remember, in the guitar course, what I do is I've written 3 songs, I think, and I show different approaches to trying to figure out how you could solo over those through those 3 songs with different, whether you're thinking pentatonic or arpeggios or diatonic or something like that. So just something to think about a little bit, and you can always check it out. There's a link over in the chat that you can look at. Another thing that I really like to do is double stops. So as I'm visualizing these chords, what I like to do, let's say I'm doing A, right? So I'm going to visualize this chord. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to something with that chord. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the 7th fret of the 4th string, and the 2nd string, I'm going to play the 5th fret right here. And I'm going to play those 2 notes together. And then I know that the next chord that's coming up is D. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stay there. And it's going to create the sound of a D sus chord because of this note right here. So listen to that once. Let me move this back just a little bit. Okay, here we go. Listen to this. So that would have sounded really nice over all 4 of those chords, it would have sounded great. But let's say I want to add in some changes here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play that that 7th fret of the 4th string and the 5th fret of the 2nd string. And then what I'm going to do is when the D chord comes up, I'm going to take my pinky here. I'm going to place that on the 7th fret of the 2nd string. So now I'm playing 2 notes out of this D major chord. So I'm going from here and then go up here. Thanks, Spike. I'm glad to hear that. Now, I know F sharp minor is coming, and again, this might be a little hard for some of you to see, so I apologize, but I'm going to go to the 6th fret of the 3rd string and the 1st fret of the 1st string, which makes like a D minor, E minor, F sharp minor. That's what I'm doing, is moving that D minor up right here. And then when it goes to the D again, I'm going to take this note here, which is 6th fret, and I'm going to move to the 7th fret. So watch this. I'm going from the A to the D to the F sharp minor, back to the D. Let's see what that sounds like over this little chord progression here. Here comes the F sharp minor, D. Let's put some picking in there. It is a super fun, super cool way of learning how to play. Now, I'm going to be completely honest with you. When I was younger and I was learning how to play, I was very much a metalhead. I know you won't believe that, but it's true. And I still am today, but I love a lot of different styles of music and certainly have a larger appreciation for the guitar itself. When I was a kid, I liked a certain style of music, and that's what I did. So one thing that I didn't really learn how to do is what I'm teaching you right now, and I wish I had learned that early on. You know, I was having a conversation, if you guys know who Tim Pierce is, he's a good friend of mine, just a really, really wonderful guy, just an incredible player. And Tim has played like this his whole life. Where I grew up on the metal side, Tim wasn't really that. And we've had many conversations about this sort of thing. And I'm very thankful that I found out how this works. Because there was a lot of players like Steve Lukather and Neil Schoen and Andy Timmons or Eric Johnson, guys like that. I love their playing, but I never understood it because I was coming from the metal side of things where your playing tends to be a bit more linear. And when I started experiencing this, I was like, this is really cool because you can really connect with the music this way. Now, again, I'm not saying that you can't connect with metal. You just connect on a different way. It tends to be a more energetic, flashy kind of thing, powerful thing. And this is just a really cool way of being able to find nice ways of making your melodies. And then, you know, D is coming. And F sharp minor comes up. And then D, and then A. You know, there's just lots of really creative things that you can do, but it requires you to think about this and use the steps that I'm trying to explain to you to get there. Because if the music starts and your brain goes blank and you're just moving through the scale, you have to stop and go, okay, what do I need to do to fix this? Because that was always my thing, okay? Was just, I would play, I always use the term brainlessly, even though I don't mean that in a negative way, but I wouldn't think, I was just playing. And I'd still use autopilot, we all do. But I need to make some sort of logical connection between what's happening with the chords and what's happening with the scale to be able to make this sound like it's connecting. more than just my friends going, wow, that was really cool. I got to make that connection so it feels good to me, right? So hopefully that makes sense to everybody. I know that's a lot of information, and I just want to double check one more time here. Thank you, Marilyn. I'm glad. And Marilyn says, let me actually throw that up here because I have the technology. There we go. Marilyn says, excited. Can't wait to try it. Thanks, Steve. You are most welcome, Marilyn. Doing a great job. We'll throw that up there too. Thank you so much. That's very, very nice of you. And I hope you guys are excited about this because I think this stuff is so great. And learning how to play melodic is just really important. By the way, that guitar course, I don't remember what the songs were I did for it, but I think one was minor and one was major and something. Hey, what's up, bud? Awesome, cool. Okay, let me make sure I got everything here. Prep a fretboard, dial in a tone, the ranges on the fretboard, the cage chording system, which is really important, making simple connections, understanding how some notes overlap, double stops we talked about, phrasing, long versus short notes. Yeah, just that kind of stuff. When you play, awesome, thank you, Toby. Toby says, I bought the course today. Awesome, thank you. So if you think about it, when you're playing, even if it's something very basic, like let me go back to this. Here's my 3 notes that we started with. There's my A, my D, and my C sharp that I was using for my F sharp. If I go back to this jam here from Elevated Jam Tracks, and I just play this. Okay, so here it starts all over. There's my A, D, F sharp, back to D. Now let's think about how we could just take those notes and do something different like this. Start adding it a little bit around it like we talked about. Our E, F sharp, D, A, E, there's a B here, see? So as those chords come up, I have to be ready to deal with them in whatever capacity I can. And if I go for something and I don't like it, the beauty is, again, I can just stop the track and I can just go, okay, what's happening here? What is that chord? I'm not sure what that chord is, and what am I going to do with it? And then I go back to my guitar and think about it. Now, one thing that I will tell you, a little hint that I love to do is, the less is more, more is more conversation. I like them both. I don't believe in less is more, and I don't believe more is more. I think all of it is important because if you're going to build energy, you got to have slow and you got to have fast. Any instrument does. Look at drums. Look at a trumpet player. Look at a saxophone player. It's not like everything has to be slow. But if everything's fast and it's never slow, then it's hard to build energy because it's already at an energy level. Again, depending on the style, right? And if we're playing Slayer, it's all that fast, right? So again, this is what I go back to all the time is when I was a kid, what seemed like in my head was a great solo is a solo that has melody and it has dynamic contrast. We'll call it that. Slow, fast, high, low, fast, low, loud, soft, all these different things, but that's relative to the style of music that you're playing. It depends on the song. If I'm playing Painkiller by Judas Priest, there's no room for slow and mellow and melodic. It's meant to be crazy and energetic and fast. So it all depends. But in this, as I'm playing, you can tell what I want to do, especially as the dynamic moves up, you can hear it in the song. I want to start adding a little more. I don't know where we're at here. So there's our E, F sharp minor. back into some more of these. Use some of this stuff. I could use right? I mean, there's just a million things that you could add into this. So you get the idea, okay? I don't want to take too much of your day, but you get the idea. Perfect. Doug says, we'll throw it up there. Doug, this type of playing gives me time to understand what I'm doing and why. And that's right. And remember, you can always stop and then reassess, what am I trying to do? How is this working? What's not working? And what is it that I need to do to fix, right? What is it that I need to work on to get better at this? Am I playing too matter-of-factly? Like, am I landing on the most obvious notes all the time? Which we do have to do. Again, it's just like school. We got to start very elementary and work our way up. That's just the way this is. If we didn't, everybody would be great at guitar. And as I always tell you, two things. Number one, you practice on the days that you eat. And number two, in your life, the guitar will win. You will die before you figure out everything on this guitar. It's impossible. But what you can do is keep getting better every day. And in order to do that, we have to have a mirror where we can look at ourselves and go, what is it that I need work on? What is it that I'm missing? What is it that I'm lacking in? And how do I develop a practice routine to get better at that? Okay, that's what you need to be able to do. Okay? So anyway, hopefully that helps you a little bit. Everybody take care, stay positive. And please, if you need to, you're going to be able to watch the replay of this on Facebook. You're going to be able to watch the replay on YouTube. And I'll join you again. Remember, noon Central, 10 a.m. Pacific on Monday. We're going to elevate this. We're going to start adding in some arpeggios into this idea. Again, to give us more creative motion and movement across the fretboard for that dynamic contrast, all right? So everybody take care, have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you all on Monday, okay? Next time on the Steve Stine Guitar Podcast. Now, in this video, you're going to learn how to use arpeggios to create more melodic guitar solos. Now, it's the first video in a 3-part series for my new course, Melodic Soloing. It's on sale now at the link in the description. All right, so the first, in my opinion, the most important thing about melodic soloing is making a connection to the chords. So you want to make sure, for instance, if you're soloing in the key of E minor, if your song is in the key of E minor, you're not just thinking E minor pentatonic or E minor, natural minor or something like that. You're thinking about the chords and trying to make some sort of connection to those chords. Now, there's two ways that you can do this. Number one, you can do that by knowing the notes on your fretboard and knowing your theory, so you know what notes are in each chord and you're able to visualize those. If you're not really able to do that, the other thing you can do is just simply visualize chord shapes across your fretboard, and there's a lot of different ways of doing this, but let me show you a couple of things. So let's say our first chord was going to be E minor. So what we might do here is we might visualize E minor even in the open position. Let's say I come down here and play those notes of an E minor chord. Okay? Now I could visualize those notes right here as well, or visualize those notes up there as well. If you enjoyed today's podcast and want to learn guitar even faster, go to guitarzoom.com and click the Get Started button to get access to courses that are right for your interest and skill level. Again, go to guitarzoom.com and click the Get Started button.